Okay. Hello, everyone. I am Frances Copeland. I realize I did not put my name on my slide. I am a child neurology coordinator at St. Louis University, and I am going to talk to you about what to do during downtime. Now that recruitment is over, let me see. Of course, technical difficulties. I have nothing to disclose. Interview season is over, and we've all submitted our rank lists, and we look forward to Monday, and hopefully we don't have to scramble, as they used to call it. Now it is, what is it now? I can't think, but hopefully we all match and we don't have to spend time on the phone next week. So what I have been doing is just some housekeeping, taking care of things that I didn't have time to focus on during recruitment season. And one of those things that I did after we submitted our match list, the match list deadline date actually, I sent out our interview survey to all of our candidates just to find out what they thought about their experience during our process. What did they find helpful? What did they dislike about the program? What did they think about our faculty and the diversity of specialties that we offered? So far, I've received about 40% of the responses, and it's very enlightening because at this point, the reason I send out the survey after, it's my first time doing it, I should say, and the reason we decided to send the survey out after the match submission rank list deadline is because we didn't want anyone to think that their answers were going to be influenced or that we would have any way of tracking who said what, or that there would be any link to their honesty and where we ranked them on the rank list. So we were able to find out some things that maybe faculty said that was alarming to a candidate, or just how much they enjoyed talking to the residents and getting insight from the residents. I asked for everyone to respond on March 14th because I figured after that, it's not likely that they're going to even focus on their interview time during this past fall and winter. They're going to spend the majority of their time finishing all of the credentialing paperwork that we're going to ask them to do to get into residency. And from what I'm told, we should expect about a 50% response rate. We interviewed 23 people, so I'm hoping that we get 11 or 12 would be ideal. And also during this time of housekeeping, I go back and I make certain that all of our rotation schedules are entered accurately in the ADP and pre-cert for each one of our residents. I typically enter this information at the beginning of the year when we get the rotation schedule, but I find that from time to time, our residents make some changes, especially the 4th and 5th year residents in our program who are full-time child neurology residents, because our 3rd year residents take, or program year 1 residents spend their entire year on the adult side. So that rarely changes, but the electives change throughout the 4th and 5th year. So I like to make certain that that is accurate. And then I go back and make certain that our program director goes in and attests to the rotations for the previous years if she didn't do that already. And also, since our 3rd year residents are in the adult program and will not spend much time on the adult side again, I ask them to take care of their clinical evaluations, also known as NEXT, before I ask them to take care of it by the end of May, because we spend the month of June with them in an orientation, and they're spending about 60% of their time on child neurology, just preparing them for their July 1st start date. And that way they don't have to scramble during their 5th year when they realize they didn't get a clinical evaluation of an adult patient. I also go through our handbook because as the year goes by, and since this is my going into my 3rd year as a child neurology coordinator, I find that certain things are not in the handbook, and I go in and make updates to the handbook, and processes and protocols are in there. We also have a chief residence handbook, and throughout the year, I find that maybe one chief did something that I like or that was important and is not in the handbook. So I go back and make those updates as well, and also outline their responsibilities. Our chiefs are responsible for the rotation schedule for the year, call schedules, and vacations. Those are their primary duties. They also contact faculty from other specialties that they would like to invite to our Child Neurology Noon Conference, and they give me a list of the speakers that they would like to hear from, and I contact them on their behalf. For the PEC and CCC preparation, I'm getting ready for we're going to have our meeting in the middle of May, because unfortunately my program director is leaving and we need to wrap up everything. So I'm preparing for our program evaluation committee meeting in CCC. So through that process, I am going into new innovations, which is our evaluation software. I know that other programs use other things, but I'm making certain that our forms there's a trainee form that we use, and I'll show you in the next slide, that makes everything very easy. So I review the evaluations and make certain that they're aligned with rotation goals and objectives for next year, because I can't change evaluations this year. And we're going to talk about that. And also the very important thing that the ACGME, I'm finding they're dinging programs on, is to make certain that the evaluations are not containing milestone questions. So we are going to go in and map our evaluations to milestones so that we get the desired results. So for all of the programs, evaluations, all of the programs should have the following evaluations: the faculty evaluation of resident evaluation of faculty, and for those, since the residents should remain anonymous so that we get honest feedback and they don't feel as if they are speaking honestly about a situation that was not favorable to the faculty member, we only send those evaluations out twice a year and in bulk with all of the residents that have rotated. So I send those evaluations out in January, and then I send them out again at the end of May. And that way, faculty cannot figure out who could possibly have said what. And make certain that those evaluations are set up so that the evaluator is anonymous when a resident is evaluating a faculty member. We also have a 360 evaluation that includes nurses, residents, staff, and those questions are all the same, and they're sent out to a number of people. And I only send those out twice a year as well, because everyone works, the nurses and the residents and staff, they don't work with each other on a daily basis, or on a monthly rotation basis in most cases. It's over a period of time that they're able to get a sense of how that resident works. We also have patient evaluations, which I do on paper because it just makes sense. I usually send those evaluations down to the clinic, and the nurse will give the paper evaluation to the patient with an envelope that they seal and put the sticker over so that I know that it hasn't been seen by anyone else, and those evaluation reports come directly to me through inter-office mail. And then we have our clinical evaluations that we set up just this year for the first time and is now required by ACGME. Scores for the right exam, we are able to enter on this form, and once I get to it, I'll show you what it looks like because I really like this form. It saves me a lot of time with, before I set this form up, I printed probably 30 sheets of paper and I had to distribute it to 10 members on our CCC and PEC member committee, and it was just way too much paper. Now I give them the reports, they look at it, they have what they want, and if they have questions about anything, I know in advance. And now maybe I print about 3 pieces of paper and we look at things electronically, and it is just a great time saver. Let's see. Also, check on your program letters of agreement. Typically, those program letters of agreement are good for 5 years, and if you're new in the position, you may not know exactly when those letters were signed, so go back and take a look at them and make certain that they don't lapse. All right. For those of you that use New Innovations, and I know that there are some who use other things, but this is what we use to get our reports. We go into Portfolio, and under Milestones and Reviews, I can take a look at the report and get, is that live? No, it's not. But this is what the report looks like. And I had to hide the name of the person just to maintain some privacy here. But at the top of the report, you'll see that I can record things such as conference attendance and their duty hours, so we can see if we have any problems with anyone going over their duty hours, and you can see we don't really have that problem in our program, fortunately. I'm also able to take a look at their scores. These are not milestone scores, but these are ratings based on the evaluations that they had. No, I'm sorry, these at the top, this is their milestone. I'm a little blind. This is where they are based on their program 1 year versus their program 2 year. We are also able to see comments that were made by faculty on their evaluations. And at the end of the review process, the committee decides if they meet expectations. Our program director is able to sign, the resident is able to sign, and we have something on file that shows that was done. And these 3 pages are all on probably 1 piece of paper, and I printed 2-sided, so all of this is on 1 form, and the committee likes to see it nice and concise. And if they have any questions, I always have New Innovations up, and we go into more detail as needed. But typically, this is all that they really need to look at to evaluate the resident for the milestones in CCC, because they are able to see the evaluations. Many of our residents who are graduating should have already started applying for the certifying exam, and I'm finding now as they are going through their process, they are asking me for documents. So I try to make certain when they first come in that they give me a copy of their certificates or their pediatric years, the first 2 years. Sometimes our pediatric program provides one certificate covering 2 years, and sometimes they give one certificate per year. So I ask for a copy of that because somehow they always seem to misplace it. And if they can't find it, and if it's just easier to have the program director write a summative letter, then we do that as well. And then I remind them that they need to have a permanent license to sit for the exam. Sometimes they don't read through that, or they don't know about that at the very beginning in like November when they start thinking about it. So I give them a heads up and tell them they need a permanent license in order to sit for the exam. Many times, if they're going on to fellowship, they will apply for a permanent license for their fellowship year so that they're prepared.
Well, and Francis, I think that's a good point to remind them, because if they are going off to fellowships, certain fellowships don't require a full training license or a full license.
Exactly.
They can get by with a training. So I think having that conversation with them is very important.
Yes, because I know that certain states take longer, from 3 months and sometimes maybe even 4 or 5 months. So the sooner they start, the better they are when September rolls around, or I think it's September when they sit for the exam. Let's see. Then I'm sure many of the programs are considering chiefs. In the past, our program didn't really have a chief resident. They considered themselves fellows, and they were fine with not having a chief, but it caused a little bit of trouble between our senior residents, because then one would say, well, I did this, so that person should do that, and I'm doing all the work. So last year, we decided it just makes sense to have a chief resident that we can rely on who will take ownership. So in order to do that, our GME requires that we send in an appointment letter appointing the chief, and there is an additional stipend set aside for that position. So we have to make certain that that's done. And as I said earlier, we also have to indicate what the chief's responsibilities are going to be, and the chiefs handle vacation schedules, rotation schedules, and lecture schedules. I also get ready for the next year, since I'm responsible for making certain, along with our chiefs, that we have didactic each week. I like to get ahead as early as we can and contact faculty and ask them to speak. We have quite a few who are really popular and are great speakers, and they love to hear from them each year because they provide a lot of insight. So their schedules fill up quite quickly. About one of them, I know I have to plan 6 months out. So I start working on that schedule now. And just so that I don't drive myself crazy, I send out an email asking for speakers within the first 3 months. And then as that fills up, I send to the others who haven't responded, and I expand it another 3 months, and so on until the schedule is full for the year. Also, we have to reserve our conference space in the hospital, which is we don't have a real issue with it, but the sooner we reserve it, the better our chances are of getting the space that we really want. So I start working on that now. And even if they aren't ready to reserve time for the next academic year, I at least can say, well, I put my request in April, and they will do their best to honor our request first. And then also knowing that some of our incoming trainees are not going to have all of the information or certificates or EHR training, and they will need to do that. I start contacting the EPIC. We use EPIC at our hospital. I contact the EPIC trainers, and I tell them how many people we're going to have. I don't know their names yet, but I give them a heads up that we're going to have so many so that we can get our dates set aside that work best with our orientation schedule instead of being led by their availability. Something new I learned at the latest New Innovations training session is that for conferences, instead of having a paper attendance sheet, which is what I've been doing, you can put a QR code on the screen, and people can just use their phones and scan in that QR code, which will then take you back to the conference portion in New Innovations and will log their attendance at conference. So you don't have to keep up with an attendance sheet. I haven't tried that yet, but I'm going to try that soon to see if I like it. That made me happy because I just do not like paper, and I am interested in getting rid of paper any opportunity that I have. Graduation. Now is the time to start planning the graduation party also. For our program, we usually have 2 graduation parties, a department graduation party for everyone who's graduating within the Department of Neurology. They have a dinner, it's nice and formal, and a presentation. And then we have a division graduation party that takes place at one of our faculty members' home. It has taken place at our program director's home for the past 3 years, but I don't know what we're going to do this year. Also, there's the graduation photo, so we have to reserve the photographer. And then I take this time to look at our website and see what kind of updates I can make that are helpful to the residents newly matched to the program. If there's some information that I can put out there that will help them. Fortunately for me, I don't have to deal with a lot of the credentialing that the new residents need to go through. Our pediatric residency coordinator takes care of a lot of that, and she has to collect all the forms, and along with our GME office. But I try to help her as much as I can because we're a team. We try to help one another, and she takes care of our residents until they transition to child neurology. So if you can make updates on the website that make it easier for your incoming trainees, that would be ideal. And that's it. That's all I have to say. So I don't know if anyone has any questions or has some other ideas or techniques that maybe I didn't consider. If you do, I'd love to hear about it. If anyone uses New Innovations and has any questions about what to do in certain things in New Innovations, I'm happy to show you. And that's all I have.
All right. Well, awesome. Well, thank you, Frances. So I'm going to thank you for sharing today.